Hi everyone and welcome to part 2 First Aid for Marriages in Diaspora. Today I'm going to be handling submission. Now I know many women would just want to click out of here now and say, what's she coming up with this old-fashioned word? I don't blame you. I felt the same way about this word submission for many years. But I'll just ask you to have a bit of patience and let me take you through this word submission and what it really means in a marriage. Now, as I said, for many years I had an issue with this word submission because, like every other woman, the words that were more prevalent for me were like equal rights, equal pay, emancipation, feminism. So submission did not at all fit into my dictionary or my equation. But somewhere along the line in your marriage, maybe some conflicts will come up, some challenges, or maybe you just want to improve your marriage. And if you go trying to do some research or anything, you keep coming across this word submission. So I tried to read about it, submission in Christianity, Islam, various religions and cultures, and I still couldn't understand, why am I expected to obey a man? Why am I expected to give myself to a man just to obey him? Don't I have my own will? Can't I have the say? Why would God create me unequal to a man? So that kind of irritated me for a long time. And I kept on researching and researching, also doing a lot of reading in the Bible and, as I told you, other religions to what they say about this topic. And then it dawned on me that actually God created the woman equal to the man. We are not unequal. And God never asked us to submit to men. God said to submit to your husband. So there's no disputing it. For God, women and men, He created us equal. So with the realization that you are equal to a man, let's take this a step further. Then why submit to a man? And then I continued, trying to figure it out. And I realized, okay, children are expected to obey their parents, honor their parents. But God never actually said you must obey your husband or, honor him. But He said submit to him. And the difference in that word submit is that this is something you do voluntarily. This is not just following sheepishly, following blindly. No. Submission is something you do voluntarily. And just like when you're writing an exam, you bring out your best points, you think about it, put in your best, you submit your paper to a lecturer, and then he gives you points and rates it. It's a bit like that with submission in a marriage. You bring out all the best you have, think about it, present it in the best way, and give it to your husband so that your husband can use it to perform his role of being a protector and being a provider. That's just what submission is about. If you are obeying a man out of fear or because you don't have a choice, you are not submitting. And you'll be doing those things reluctantly. You wouldn't be doing them out of conviction. You wouldn't be doing them with a good heart. You are forced to do it. But if you really realize that submission, it means putting the best together willingly. And when you do something willingly, you are doing it happily. And you give it to the man. When you see that way, you don't have any problems with it. You don't feel degraded. You don't feel inferior. You don't feel someone is lording it over you. You just feel like out of love, you are contributing something to a man for him to make a better home for the both of you and for the children. But one problem we women have is that sometimes, and this is not really our fault, it's naturally, you marry a man out of some reason other than really being terribly in love with him, because society is putting pressure on you to marry, or maybe the man is well off and your family would rather want that, or maybe the man is living abroad. So you marry this man, and in such a case, it's difficult to submit to such a man because you are not really naturally attracted to this man, but it's kind of like a forced thing out of circumstances. Even some men from diaspora, when they go back to Africa to pick their wives, maybe the men were on this level. Now, having lived in diaspora, they feel they're up here. They come to look for a woman up here. But the problem is that the ladies up there, they don't really see these men as being up there. They just, this is just like, let me say, an unnatural elevation out of circumstances. So when they come with these men to Europe, they suddenly realize, oh, I'm more educated than you, or I have more up there than you. Then submission is very difficult. But please, ladies, if we have made up our mind to marry a man and start a family with him, we have to really pray for the grace and find a way to just try and fulfill and sacrifice this duty we have in marriage so that the marriage can work out better. And that also would make decision taking in the family better. Because when you realize and you willingly accept that it is the man to make the decisions in the home, then there's not going to be much conflict. All you do is you try to convince him, you lay out your points to him, and you give the man the chance to take his decision. Maybe your decision is even better, but don't impose it. Don't get angry. Don't say hurtful things or anything. Just present your own opinion and let the man take his decision. Maybe you might have to come back at some other time, maybe after a few days, or when everybody's in a good mood, you can bring up the topic again. Because if you bring up a topic with hostility, or if you insist on your right, some men, just to prove a point that they are the men, they want to do it their way, even though they know that your way is the right way. They will do it. And secondly, if you keep imposing on a man, and you don't submit to him or allow him to take decisions too, men have a way of withdrawing. They will just distance themselves from the family and allow you to take the decision, and that's not good for a marriage too. So please, ladies, let's really reflect on this word submission and try to introduce it into our marriage. It's not something you can do overnight. You have to keep practicing it. You'll often fail, but if you keep practicing it, you'll get it at a stage. Because a lot of very strong women, key feminists, have also come to a point in their marriage when they realized their marriage was breaking. They were always having quarrels. They were not happy. The man was not happy. And they had to go back and reflect on this word submission. And they introduced it into their marriages. And the marriages started working out very well. Because in most cases, when a woman is submitting to her husband, the man becomes a much nicer person and even easier to handle. I even noticed it in my marriage. When I really understood what this word submission was and was doing it like happily and joyfully, because I was really convinced that I have to do this and I want to do it and I'm happy doing it. It made it so much easier for me to submit. And I would say my husband seemed to appreciate what I was doing much more. Even though ironically, I wasn't even doing as much as before when I was under the impression, okay, I have to do it. I'm doing it. It's my duty. He didn't even really appreciate it that much then, because it was obvious the attitude with which I was doing those things, like, okay, then I'll do it anyway. It's my duty. Okay, I'll do it. But when I really started having a joy, in allowing him to take decisions or being submissive to him, bringing the points with happiness, everything, laying it for him to take his decision, he seemed to appreciate less more. And that's the irony about it. A lot depends on how you give. And I think that was why God, in his infinite wisdom, asked women to submit to men. Submission too, when a woman is submissive to a man, there's one other thing submission means. It's something you give freely to a man for a purpose for the family, which means if a man is abusing you physically, emotionally, sexually, you have to withdraw that submission. You should no longer have a will to submit to him. Withdraw the submission, because God made you as a temple. You are precious to God, and your first duty is to take care of yourself. So a woman who understands submission knows that she's willingly giving to a man. You are doing it willingly for the man to fulfill his purpose given to him by God. So when the man starts abusing you, he's no longer fulfilling God's purpose. So your duty is to withdraw the submission, because if you continue submitting him, you are enabling him to commit sin. So women, please, submission does not mean that you should submit in an abusive marriage. No. If you're in an abusive marriage, seek professional help. Here in Diaspora, there are a lot of places you can go to. Seek help and you will get help. And finally, I would just like to conclude with a story from the Bible, briefly, about Abraham and Sarah. When God promised Abraham to take him to another land, a foreign land, to multiply him and to make him to get control over the land, Abraham went on the journey with his family and he took his wife along. Now on the way, he told his wife, if they should ask you, say, I am your brother. Now twice, Pharaoh and Abimelech, they called Abraham and said, who is this woman? And Abraham said, she's my sister. And Abimelech took Sarah to him, just like Pharaoh then. But God warned him in the night in a dream, return that woman to Abraham, because she's his wife and not his sister. And he's a great prophet. If you harm him, harm will befall your household. So what do we learn out of this story? Abraham, that was a righteous man, a prophet, that God had promised him directly that he would have success in Diaspora, because that was Diaspora kind of. He still fell into the temptation and dishonored his wife so badly by accepting for a man to take her into a harem. He didn't protect his wife at that time, but still, Sarah accepted and said she was his sister. At the end, God saved her. They went to the promised land. It still took her years, but eventually she had her child, and God's promise was fulfilled in their life. So if Abraham, a prophet, a righteous man, could, out of fear and desperation in Diaspora, make such a mistake, then who are our husbands here in Diaspora? We have to be very patient with our men here. They are facing a lot every day out there. They are facing challenges. So too, we are facing challenges. So no matter the situation, how difficult it gets sometimes, how undeserving the man may appear at times, please, let's work on this submission. I hope this advice or these words would be able to help you, and please If you know any other person, woman, this might help, kindly do share, and thank you for coming on here.